It's 6 p.m. Cairo local time, and it's time for the English news bulletin. And starting up with the main headlines of the day. President Sisi gives his directives to review the petition submitted by the National Council for the Human Rights to pardon a number of the prisoners. And Egypt sends a letter of protest to the UN Security Council over Ethiopia's inauguration of its Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. And Qatar condemns what it described as a cowardly Israeli strike targeting the residential buildings housing members of Hamas political bureau. Welcome back. The news in full. President Sisi ordered a review of petitions submitted by the National Council for the Human Rights regarding the presidential the pardon for the number of the convicts. The National Council for the Human Rights had requested that President Sisi, within the framework of his constitutional powers, consider issuing a pardon for a group of the convicts in response to the request the Council received from their families. And Egypt on Tuesday sent a letter of the protest to the president of the UN Security Council over Ethiopia's inauguration of its Renaissance Dam on the Blue Nile River. And in the letter, the foreign minister Badr Abdelati stated that that despite all the failed efforts to give Ethiopian dam a false legitimate cover, the operation of the dam violates the international law and the norms. And he added also that the inauguration has no legal consequences on the legal system governing the Eastern Nile Basin in accordance with the international law. And the top diplomat also stressed that Egypt's firm stance rejecting the unilateral Ethiopian measures in the Nile River, which threaten the existential interest of the people of the two downstream countries, Egypt and Sudan. And also Abdelati highlighted that Egypt reserves the right to take all measures permitted under the international law and the UN Charter to defend the existential interest of its people. And in the meantime, Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli shared a meeting of the Higher Council for the Energy at the governmental headquarters in the new administrative capital. And the official spokesman of the Prime Minister's office said that the meeting sought to diversify the energy sources in order to ensure the necessary demand across the production and development sectors are met. As part of the state's vision for the sustainable development, the meeting also tackled the state efforts to cooperate with the global corporations and the private sector's companies and implementing more the renewable energy projects, enhancing the quality of electricity and the production, distribution grids, and limiting rates of electrical power loss. And also, in the meantime, Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati met with his Iranian counterpart Abbas Araghchi and the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA), Rafael Grossi, on Cairo on Tuesday. The meeting comes within the framework of the directions by the President Sisi to back de-escalation efforts in the region and to prepare the atmosphere for the resumption of the negotiations between Iran and IAEA. And they said also that the meeting also aimed to bring the closer viewpoints of concerned parties in order to reach a sustainable settlement that takes into consideration the interests of all parties and to contribute to regaining the trust, decreasing escalation, and finding an atmosphere that boosts the regional security and stability. And still also with the Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati warned against expanding the Israeli military offensive in Gaza, stressing that Egypt's total rejection to the forced displacement is forced for the Palestinians from the lands and highlighting the importance of establishing a Palestinian state on the borders of June 4th, 1967. And this came in a phone call at the top diplomat held with his Italian counterpart, Antonio Tajani. And during the phone call, both top diplomats tackled the humanitarian crisis in Gaza as well as the developments with the Iranian nuclear file. In another phone call on Monday with her German counterpart, Jon Wadfel, Abdulati stressed that Egypt's total rejection to continued Israel aggression on the Gaza Strip. Earlier on Monday, Abdulati and the Saudi Foreign Minister Faisal bin Farhan expressed the rejection to the continued Israeli genocide war in Gaza. And also, Qatar condemned a cowardly Israeli strike targeting residential buildings housing members of the Hamas political bureau. The Qatar's foreign ministry spokesman Majid al-Ansari said that the state of Qatar strongly condemns the cowardly Israeli attack that targeted the residential building houses several members of the political bureau of Hamas in the Qatari capital, Doha. And the Qatar condemns the strike and considered it as a violation of international law. And the 33rd aid convoy set from Egypt to Rafah border crossing to nearby Karam Abu Salim crossing in the southern part of the border with the Gaza Strip. And the Rafah border crossing officials said that the convoy, part of the so-called Zad al-Izza campaign, carries thousands of tons of aid, housing materials, food and the medical supplies. And the campaign was launched by the Egyptian Red Crescent Society on July 27th to support the Gazans. And still with Israel, where Israeli occupation army today conducted a strike on Al-Salam residential tower in Gaza City in the northern Gaza Strip, as 51 Palestinians were reportedly killed today in continued Israeli aggression that centered on the main city in the Palestinian enclave. The hospitals in the northern parts of the Strip reported at least 7 martyrs, while the Nasser hospital in the south reported 8 other martyrs. And this came as the Palestinians living in the ruins of Gaza City received Israeli occupation leaflets ordering them out after Israel bombardment several residential towers to the ground in the past few days. And the evacuation orders caused panic and confusion among the residents of the city, which is also witnessing a humanitarian crisis. While some health authorities in the Gaza announced that they would evacuate Gaza City, 2 main operational the hospitals, Al-Shifa and Al-Ahli, others said that would not leave the patients unattained. The Israeli occupation military assault has killed over 64,220 Palestinians and left nearly the entire population internally displaced. And the Arab condemnations and the international criticism mounted over this. And the Lebanese security sources said that an Israeli occupation strike today south of Beirut targeted and wounded a Hezbollah member. The Israeli occupation has continued to carry out regular airstrikes in Lebanon despite a November truce that sought to end more than a year of the hostilities, including 2 months of open war with the Hezbollah group. The strike comes a day after the Israeli occupation military said it had hit several Hezbollah targets in the eastern Bekaa Valley, including what it described as the training compounds used by group's elite Radwan force. Lebanon's health ministry said that those strikes killed 5 people. Under the November truce, the Hezbollah was to withdraw its fighters north of the Litani River, around 30 kilometers from the Israeli border. Israel was to withdraw its troops from Lebanon, but has kept them in 5 areas it deems strategic. And still with Israel, where Israel struck in the vicinity of Syria's central Homs city, the coastal city of Latakia, and the historic city of the Palmyra. Syria's foreign ministry condemned that Israeli airstrikes as a blatant infringement of its sovereignty and regional stability, saying in a statement on Tuesday that they were part of ongoing series of escalations pursued by Israel against the Syrian territory. Israel has for years waged a campaign of the aerial bombing bombardment that destroyed much of the country's military infrastructure, and this has ramped up since the Israel war in Gaza. And a man died as a result of the Ukrainian drone attack overnight on the Russian Black Sea city of Sochi. Overall, Russian defense systems destroyed 31 Ukrainian drones overnight, including the 15 over the Black Sea. Details in the coming report.
A Russian airstrike killed more than 20 civilians who were collecting their pensions in a village in eastern Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called on Tuesday for pressure by Kiev's allies on Russia, whose forces have pressed grinding offensive across much of the eastern Donetsk region as diplomatic efforts to end a 3.5-year-old war have largely stalled. Zelensky said the Russian airstrike had hit the village of Yorova, about 50 miles from the city of Slavink and several kilometers behind the front line. Russia did not immediately comment on Zelensky's remarks, and Moscow has denied targeting civilians, but tens of thousands have died since its full-scale invasion on February 2022. Ukraine's Human Rights Commissioner said the attack was yet another confirmation of systematic terror against the civilian population in Ukraine. Authorities in Donetsk have been appealing to civilians to flee the fighting since the early days of Russia's invasion in February 2022. Ukrainian commander-in-chief said the week that Russian forces plummeted Ukrainian troops threefold in some areas of the front and by 6 times in regions where Moscow has concentrated its forces. U.S. President Donald Trump has tried to find a way to end the war in recent weeks, but has little to show for his efforts.
And to France, where the French Minister François Bayrou arrived at the Élysée Palace today to submit his resignation to the President Emmanuel Macron after the Parliament ousted the government in the confidence vote. The French President Office said in a statement late Monday that Macron took the note of the outcome and would name a new premier in the next days, although the identity of the new premier remains subject to frenzied speculation. And now to the world of the business, where Egypt stock market indices collectively surge and strong purchasing operations from institutions and investment funds of the local and the Arab investors met by the selling operations of the foreign ones. The benchmark EGX 30 index rose by 0.4% to close at 34,601 points, and the EGX 70 index for small and the medium shares rose by 0.06%. Meanwhile, the broader EGX 100 index retreated by 0.07%. And the Lieutenant General Osama Rabia, the chairman of the Suez Canal Authority, inspected the construction of the various marine units to the locomotive factory of the Safaga, which is being built in the partnership between the Suez Canal Authority and the Suez Red Sea Arsenal Company. The visit aims to periodically monitor the progress and review developments in the construction of the initial production line for the AZM tugboats, with a pulling force of 90 tons being built for the Suez Canal Authority. And in the commodities of the oil, prices gained on Tuesday after the OPEC decided to increase the production by less than what market participants had anticipated. The Brent crude futures were up by 1.1% at $66.23 per barrel. And the spot gold earlier touched a fresh record high of $3,659.1 an ounce, buoyed by expectations of imminent Fed cuts. And now to the exciting sports. Liverpool star Mohamed Salah could this week become the second African football icon after Ashraf Hakimi to ensure the presence of the 2026 World Cup in North America. Salah will captain Egypt in Burkina Faso in the top of the table African zone Group A on the qualifier on Tuesday. The Pharaohs also will guarantee finishing the first with 2 matches to spare. And Paris Saint-Germain star Hakimi helped Morocco become the first African qualifiers at the weekend when they scored 5 unanswered goals after Niger were reduced to 10 men by a red card in the Rabat. And the 9 group winners in Africa qualify for the World Cup, which will feature a record of the 48 nation, up from 32 at last edition in Qatar 3 years ago. And Salah converted a penalty to 2-0 when over Ethiopia in Cairo on Friday, and the Manchester City striker Omar Marmoush also scored from a spot kick to maintain a 5-point lead over the Barkinabab. And the Burkina Faso crushed the 10-man Djibouti 6-0 the same day, with the recent Brentford signing the Dando in another spot kick. By this, we come to the end of our English news bulletin on Channel 2. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to come.